The other thing I wanted to mention is this. Initially, we had plans on launching our small group today, and so right after service, we're just going to have you guys go. So after service ending at 1:30, we're going to have you guys break out from 1:30 to 2:30 in your small group. But instead of doing that, I think what we need to do is come together as a church and pray. Is that okay? Is that okay if we stay for 15, 20 minutes after service and just all of us pray together as a church? You know, in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 26, it says that we are all members of one body. And as members of one body, when one part of your body is suffering, then the whole body suffers together. You see, when your finger is jammed, or when you have to amputate your arm, you are suffering, not just in that isolated part of your body, but your entire being suffers. And I know that a lot of you guys, there are a handful of you guys that may not know who Ryan is, and you are distant from the situation. But what we ask is that as a church, as a body, we come together, we breathe together, we hurt together, and we walk with Ryan together. You guys do that? Okay, so on the back side again, this is the email address. Please try to send as many messages as possible. Now, today's sermon is called Understanding Suffering Through the Lens of the Bible. Understanding Suffering Through the Lens of the Bible. If you've seen my post on Facebook, I said that we're going to take a break from our church series. For those of you guys that have been with us for a while, we've been going through the church series, and we've been talking about what it means to have a church and how to build a biblical church here. But, you know, with the most recent development that's happened in our ministry, this topic, the topic of pain and suffering, the topic of tragic events happening and visiting us in our lives, this is something that we need to address. I had a handful of students individually text me or talk to me and shared with me how they're struggling in their faith. They said they can't go to God right now. They can't get themselves to pray or to worship God. And so I asked them, why is that? Why is it so hard for you to go to God right now? Why are you angry towards God? And then this was the question. Why would a good and almighty God let this happen? Or why would God have this happen to Ryan, especially for someone who's just turned his life around, especially for someone who just met the Lord and he was now excited to do great things, not only for this church, but for the gospel. Why would God bring such evil upon such a wonderful person like our brother Ryan? And that's a very fair question. And that's the first question we ask whenever we're faced with suffering. Why God? God, why would you allow this? You know, Tim Keller, he wrote a book on suffering, and in the intro chapter he says this. He says, whether you're a Christian or not, whether you hold on to the Christian faith or not, this is the reality of living here on earth. Every single one of us will suffer. If you're not suffering now, you will suffer in the future. You know, you rewind just a year and a half. Ryan Clark was healthy, he was strong, he was lively, right? His life was normal, but we had another brother who wasn't healthy. We had a brother named Justin. You guys remember him, Justin Lee? He was suffering, right? And I said the same thing then. If you are not suffering now, you will suffer in the future. And Ryan heard those words, and I don't know how seriously he took those words at that time. And he might have thought to himself, well, that's not me. I'm not Justin. That will never happen to me. And yet, now here's a brother who's going through this exact same thing. And so if you're tempted in this room to think that this message doesn't apply to you, that what happened to Ryan, what happened to the others in the car accident will not happen to you, I want you to think twice about it. Here is the reality of living in a broken, sinful world. Every one of us will suffer. It's not a matter of if we will suffer, but it's when will we suffer. And here's the thing. When we are suffering, unless we have a biblical understanding of what suffering is all about, unless we understand the dynamic of what happens behind the scenes when there's suffering in your life, chances are you might waver or even walk away from your faith. For those in the church, for those who claim to be Christians, when they're struck with tragedy, one of two things happen. Okay, I want you guys to hear this. And this is going to be true of you too. When you're struck with tragedy, and just to share a little bit more, even this pastor in this room, we had a brother who lost his father, had to go to his funeral. Can you imagine going to your father's funeral tomorrow or this upcoming year? We had a brother that had to walk through that path this past month or this past year. We have another brother whose mother has cancer and doesn't know how many months she will live. We have brothers and sisters who have to walk with their disabled siblings and will have to help them through that process for the rest of their lives. But here's the thing. When evil visits us, when we are faced with suffering, you have one of two responses. One of two things will happen when you are faced with suffering. You will either go closer to God or you will walk further away from God. It will not be the same. You will not remain the same. It will not be the same mutual relationship when suffering comes. When suffering visits you, one of two things will happen to you. You will either get closer to God or you will walk further away from God. Let me just say this, okay? When evil comes upon you, when suffering comes upon you, there is not a more tragic thing than to walk away from the very source of hope, from the very source of life. You've already been struck with tragedy, and when you walk away from God as a result of that, you place on yourself even greater, infinitely greater tragedy, which is you walked away from the only hope, the only strength, the only anchor and the cornerstone you have to hold on to. Does that make sense? So today's sermon is applicable for every person. You may never have known Ryan. This event may never have affected you this past week, but this sermon is appropriate for every one of us. Can you guys open up to Job chapter 1? Understanding suffering through the lens of the Bible. Job chapter 1, verses 6 through 12. Job chapter 1, starting verse 6. Now, there was a day when the sons of God, talking about the angels, okay, and this is a scene that's taking place in heaven, not on earth, okay? Now, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. The Lord said to Satan, "From where have you come?" And Satan answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking up and down on it." And the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, who fears God and turns away from evil?" Then Satan answered the Lord and said, "Does Job fear God for no reason? Have you not put a hedge around him and his house and all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will curse you to your face." And the Lord said to Satan, "Behold, all that he has is in your hand. Only against him do not stretch out your hand." So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. Now, we're going to be covering three main points from this passage. And I want all of you guys to take diligent notes, because this will help you walk through the path of suffering when suffering comes upon you. When you're struck with tragedy, unforeseen tragedy, unexpected tragedy, when you get the news that someone you love has cancer, when you get the news that someone got in a car accident, when you get some sort of terrible news that's about to turn your world upside down, and your faith is on the line, I want you to turn to this passage and remember these 3 points. Here are the 3 points. Number 1, we must know our true enemy. Number 1, we must know our true enemy. Number 2, we must walk by faith. In a season of darkened, suffering time, we must walk not by sight, but by faith. And last but not least, we must cling to Jesus Christ. Know your enemy. Walk by faith. Cling to Jesus Christ. Let's talk about the first one. We must know our true enemy. Look at today's passage again. It says this: Now there was a day when the sons of God came and presented themselves before the Lord. The angels were gathering around the throne of God, and they were worshiping God. But in the midst of that gathering, Satan approached him. One who was not normally in the assembly of that gathering came on this particular event. Okay? And so God, seeing Satan, who's not a regular attendee of this gathering, said or asked them, "From where have you come?" And Satan answered, "From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking up and down on it." Now, we might miss a very important information from this little phrase if we just skim through it, okay? This phrase right here, going from to and fro, walking up and down it, Satan is scanning the face of the earth. He's looking around for what? I want you to turn to 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. Or I want you to at least write this reference down, because you're going to need it later down the road. Okay? This is what it says in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. Now be sober-minded, be watchful, be alert. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. When a lion is going to and fro, up and down the Safari Desert, right? He's not looking to plant trees. He's not looking to help an animal in need. When a lion is going to and fro, right, what is he doing? He's looking for someone to devour. And we're told that Satan is doing that constantly. So in this passage, when we're told that Satan was going to and fro, before he came to God, he was doing something before. You know what he was doing? He was on a mission. He was on a hunt to devour whoever he possibly could. And as he was scanning the earth, and as he was looking for people to devour, which is the only thing he's thinking about doing, which is the only objective and mission in his life, right? He came across a man, a particular man, and his name was Job. Now, we're told that Job was upright, that he was blameless, that he was righteous, and that he loved God. But do you know what the problem was? This Job was protected by God. We're told that Satan says that God's put a hedge around Job to the point where he can't even touch him. And so Satan sees someone that he wants to devour, but there's protection all around him, so he can't get close to him. And so on his mission, on his frustration, he goes to God, right? And God already knows why Job is there. You know, when you go back and you look at this passage, right, and God asks, "From where have you come from?" And Satan says, "From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking up and down on it." And then in verse 8, it says, "The Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job?" God is not suggesting that Satan kill or attack Job. God already knows why Satan came and visited him. You can retranslate this, and it's more like, are you here because of Job? God already knows the agenda of Satan. And so Satan doesn't skip a beat. He doesn't miss a beat. He immediately goes and he says, does Job fear God for nothing? Does Job love you for nothing? Job doesn't really love you because of who you are. He only loves you because you protected him, because you blessed him. So Satan goes to God after being unable to attack someone he wants to, and then he says, take off those hedges. Stop protecting him. Job doesn't love you for who you are. He only loves you because of the things he has. You remove all of that, stretch out your hand against him, and he will curse you. He will walk away from his faith. I want you guys to understand this. Your true enemy, whenever evil comes your way, it is 100% of the time Satan and the demonic spirits. 100% of the time. 10 out of 10. 100 out of 100. Million out of million times. It is Satan and his demonic spirits. It is impossible for God to bring evil upon us. Look again to these passages. You know what Satan says? Satan says, I want you to, it says this, okay, verse 11. After he says, he's questioning the character of Job, and he's saying, take away all the blessings, and he's going to curse you. He says this, verse 11, stretch out your hand. That's important right there, okay? Satan tells God, stretch out your hand and strike him. Touch all that he has, right? But God doesn't. He takes the hedges off. He allows for Satan to strike his hand, but God never does. You know, in all the years of counseling, especially when people are hurting and they're suffering and they're going through some tragic time, the question they ask is, why would God do this to me? Why does God do this to me or to this person or in this situation? And the answer 100% of the time is, it is not God. He may allow it. And we're not going to sugarcoat that. If you look at today's bulletin, right, and you look at Catechism number 2, we're told that God is sovereign over everything. That he is in control, and everything only happens as long as God permits it. So we do have to wrestle with the question of, why does God allow it? But I want you to get this. God does not bring suffering into your life. Let me tell you a little bit more about what Satan does. What sort of habit, history he has. What sort of character he has, okay? You can write these Bible passages down. Mark chapter 5, verses 2 through 9. Just listen to this, okay? When Jesus had stepped out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man, what? With an unclean spirit. He lived among the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been bound with shackles and chains, but he wrenched the chains apart, and he broke the shackles in pieces. No one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day, among the tombs and on the mountains, he was crying out and cutting himself with stones. This is what Satan does. Here's a picture of a man who's demonically possessed. When the demonic spirit enters into your life or is trying to work in your life, he's bringing suffering and pain. Here's another passage, Matthew chapter 9, verses 30 through 36. As they were going away, behold, a demon-oppressed man who was mute was brought to him. And when the demon had been cast out, the mute man began to speak. And the crowds marveled. And then shortly after, we're told in verse 35, Jesus went throughout all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom. And what? Healing every disease and every affliction. There are things that Satan does, and there are things that God does. Whenever you see evil, hurt, pain, suffering, that is the act of Satan. God reverses the curse of sin. You see that throughout Scripture. Read the Gospels. You see a contrast between what Jesus does and the affliction that people are in. Here's point number 1. Know your true enemy. The raw emotions, the energy, the anger, the hurt that you feel, that shouldn't be directed towards God. But we have to direct that towards our true enemy. Number 2, We must walk by faith. This is a very important one. When Job, I'll spoil alert, but when Job is visited by Satan, because God allows it, Job is struck with disaster after disaster after disaster. He loses all of his possessions. He was a very wealthy, highly esteemed man in the society. He loses all of his possessions. All of his children, we're told, are killed. His wife leaves him. His friends abandon him. And he's covered in boils. And he takes out a broken shard of pottery. And he's cutting himself because it's itching so much. And for 30 chapters or so, he and his friends are going back and forth, trying to answer the question, why is this happening? Why is this happening to you, Job? I don't know why it's happening. They go back and forth. Isn't that the question we ask? When we're struck with this tragedy, we want the answer, why? Why is this happening? Did I do something wrong? Is God angry with me? Does God hate me? Did he abandon me? That's the natural question we ask, right? And finally, you guys can open there, but in chapter 38, Job chapter 38, starting in verse 1, this is what it says. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said this, who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Dress for action like a man. I will question you and make it known. You know what's happening? For about 30 chapters, Job and his friends are going back and forth. They're trying to figure out, they're asking, why? They're giving all these explanations, all these theories, all these understanding that they think is the reason why this is happening. And God finally breaks silence and he enters into that conversation. He says, who is it that is darkening your counsel without knowledge? Who is leading you astray? All the things that you have suggested of why this is happening are false. You want the answer? You want to hear from me? Get ready. He's saying, man up. That's what he's saying, okay? Verse 4. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Who stretched the line upon it? And for the next 3 chapters, God just goes on and on and on, and he asks them to answer these simple questions. Who makes the morning stars sing? Who makes sure the suns go up and down? Who controls Leviathan, the uncontrollable beast? And he goes on and on and on, right? And so all these guys were asking, they're like, God, why is this happening? God, I don't deserve this. God, I've been good, and all these things. And then the moment God comes into the picture and he's speaking, he doesn't ever give the answer why. He never explains himself. But as God is speaking and he's showing himself, you know what happens to Job? He begins to shrivel up. He begins to crumble and he hides his face. He says, God, I am unworthy. In Psalm 8:4, it says, what is man? Let me read to you from verse 1. O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You have set your glory above the heavens. Out of the mouth of babies and infants, you have established strength because of your foes, to still the enemy and the avenger. When I look at your heavens and the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place, what is man? Who am I that you are mindful of him? And the Son of Man that you care for him. You know, we curse God and we question God and we say, God, why this, why that? God, what's wrong with you? God, this. God, answer yourself, defend yourself. I want you to do this. I need an explanation from right now. That all comes from a sense of entitlement. We say, we don't deserve this, but I'm getting this, so God, you better come and explain yourself right now because I'm about to walk away from you. But when we truly see God for who he is, the only response we have is, God, who am I that you would even care about me? When I look at the works of your hand, when I look at the moon and the stars and the mountains and the sea and all that exists in this universe, the question is not why, God, are you letting this suffering happen? The question is, why do you even know me? Why do you even care about me? Think of the most greatest celebrity or pop idol in your life right now. Someone you would die to meet, okay? Let's say you got into a car accident. You're not going to be like, hey, what's wrong with you? Right? Why aren't you coming and visiting me? But if they do come and visit, you know what you say? Oh my gosh. You're actually caring about my situation? Let me give you a very real, honest, or real example. Ryan Kwok got into an accident. Now, the Baltimore Ravens had nothing to do with this accident. The Kwok family didn't expect anything from the Baltimore Ravens. And yet when they heard the news, they sent a little gift, and they were filled with gratitude. Said, wow, you recognize our situation? Wow, you would take time to give us a gift? If there is that understanding, then how much more between you, dust, here for a moment and gone the next, and God eternal, the creator of all that exists. Does that make sense, guys? We have to understand this. You might suffer, and God may never tell you why. God may never explain himself. But this is what it means now to walk by faith, okay? Because God doesn't just give us nothing. He does give us a whole lot, okay? What does it mean to walk by faith? Faith is the assurance. It's the conviction of things that you're hoping for. It's the things that are unseen. When you are struck with tragedy, when you are hurting and you're suffering, and it seems like God is the furthest thing away from your situation, these are the two things. When you can't see anything and you're walking in darkness, it's not by sight that you walk. You look around, you look at the situation, and you're like, this is terrible. God must hate me. When you're only living by sight, that might be the conclusion you come to. But when you enter into a season of utter darkness, the dark night of the soul, we begin to not walk by sight. We don't live by sight, but what? We live by faith. What do we hold on to? Here are two things. Number one, Christians suffer too. Christians suffer too. And number two, God only does good. We cling on to those two things. We may not see it. We may not feel it in that time, but we cling on to those two things. Can you open up with me to 2 Corinthians? It's in the New Testament. I don't have it up here, so I need you guys to look at it with me or write this reference down. Now, 2 Corinthians chapter 11. 2 Corinthians was written by Apostle Paul. Apostle Paul is arguably one of the most influential and impactful individual in history to advance God's kingdom, to do God's work, and to love God. He is probably one of the most passionate, faithful servants of God to ever live on the face of the planet. You know, I had a conversation with one of our brothers, and he couldn't get over the fact that God let this happen to Ryan when Ryan was doing so much good for his church and his kingdom. He was saying things like, he came around, he went on the mission trip, he was running Lockett, he had big visions and plans for J&G. He was doing everything good, and why would God let this happen? I want you to know that your relationship to God does not mean that you're immune to suffering. Look with me, 2 Corinthians chapter 11. This is Apostle Paul talking now, starting in verse 23. Let me instill some faith, some strengthening to your faith right now. Apostle Paul's talking about himself. He says this, are they servants of Christ? I am a better one. I am talking like a madman, you know that, with far greater labors, far more imprisonments, with countless beatings, and often near death. 5 times I received at the hands of the Jews the 40 lashes less than one. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. A night and a day I was adrift at sea. While on frequent journeys and danger from rivers, danger from robbers, danger from my own people, danger from Gentiles, danger in the city, danger in the wilderness, danger and in toil and hardship, through many a sleepless night, in hunger and thirst, often without food, in cold and exposure. And apart from all the other things, there is a daily pressure on me of my anxiety for all the churches. Apostle Paul did not live a cushioned life. Apostle Paul, because he was a faithful servant of God, did not have a comfortable, problem, pain-free life. If anything, because he was living for Jesus, he received all of that suffering. You know what's interesting about Job? Job was single-handedly targeted by Satan. And you know why he was targeted by Satan? It was because he was an upright and blameless man, because he was a man who was trying to live in fear and in awe of God. When we have this understanding that once we become good Christians, then good things will come into our life, that our life will be happier, it will turn around for the better, there will be no pain or no suffering, that is anti-gospel. That is against the gospel. The gospel is not that you go to God so he can give you blessing. God doesn't want a bargaining relationship with you. You scratch my back, I scratch your back. That is not what God wants. He entered and pursued you first, and it was unconditional. I don't care what sins you've committed. I don't care what you struggle with. I will still choose to love you. And what God wants is for you to love him despite whatever circumstance you're in. The prosperity gospel, the gospel that falsely promises that you follow Jesus and you'll have health, you'll have protection, you'll have wealth, and you have all these wonderful things, that is against the Bible. That is against Christianity. In fact, what we see, look at John chapter 15, where Jesus says, no servant is greater than his master. If the world persecuted me, they will persecute you too. Let me go out on a limb, stretch my neck a little bit at the cost of potentially saying something that might be false, but I'm going to say it anyway, okay? Ryan was singled out. He was honed in on by Satan. Some of our brothers and sisters carry the guilt that they are the reason why he's in this situation. Some of them had self-imposed guilt and burden. And I have to tell them, even if you were not in that situation, and they're constantly replaying the scenario, they're saying, only if I didn't say this, only if I didn't do that, only if, right? But here's the thing, even if you didn't do that, Satan was going to visit Ryan one way or another. Why? Because Satan was prowling around. He was going to and fro. He saw a child who was once under his kingdom of darkness. He was once under his captivity. I don't know if you guys know the story, but Ryan was not a believer before this summer. He confessed to me that he used to hate me and he used to never listen to a single sermon. He said that. And some of you guys who know Ryan, you know this, right? He was always in the back, goofing off on the phone, and he was actively opposing all that was Christian related, all about me and church. Satan was happy with Ryan. He had no issues with Ryan. Why? Because Satan's ultimate objective is to sever your relationship with God. As long as you're apart from God, you're good to go. But guess what happened? The unthinkable, the unimaginable, the miraculous thing happened. When Ryan was in the kingdom of darkness and he was destined for hell, God visited him. When Ryan wasn't even seeking, when he signed up for Peru, some people know this, but he only signed up for his friends. And he confessed that too. He didn't sign up because he wanted to go on missions for good stuff. He said he signed up because of his friends. But you know what happened? Even when he signed up with all the wrong intentions, God poured out his spirit, his love, and Ryan's life turned around. Those of us, ask those who went to Peru, I myself saw before my own eyes his life changing. Him going from prayerless, worshipless, to passionately jumping up and down and crying out to God. By the time he left Peru, His heart was burning with the gospel and love for God. And he said, I'm going to come back to JG. I'm going to make sure that everyone else experiences the same God that I experienced. He had great plans. He had great things that he wanted to do. And he surely started to do that. Satan, going to and fro, saw one of his captives set free. He lost one of his prisoners. And so he came after Ryan. Believe that. You follow Christ, you put a target on your back. You have an enemy who will despise you and who will oppose you. Christians are not immune to suffering. In fact, you might receive harsher pain and suffering. When you look at church history, you look at the first converts, first Christians, they were thrown into gladiator stadiums, and they would set wild beasts free, and they would be eaten alive as people were cheering and having fun watching this entertainment. Christians were rallied or gathered together. They were tied to a post, covered in tar, and they would be lit on fire, and they would cover the street city lamp at night all throughout Rome. We have accounts of Christians simply because they followed Jesus. They were sawed in half. They were hung upside down on the cross. Do you not realize that in this life we have an enemy? He's not kicking back. He doesn't take vacation days. He's not watching and binge watching Netflix. He's like a lion looking for people to devour. And that's you too. You know what I will say? If Satan is not messing with you, maybe you should be a little worried. Why is Satan good to you? Why are you not faced with any persecution? Maybe it's because he's not worried about you. But let me say this, okay? I know this is heavy, but this is important. Imagine with me that there are two doors, and each door represents a life. Door number one represents life here on earth. Door number two represents life after death. And let's imagine that you have the option of enjoying blessings, pain-free, suffering-free life only behind one of the doors. Would you rather place that behind door number one or door number two? Here's another way of saying it. Would you rather have completely pain-free, enjoyable life here on earth for 70, 80 years, and then live the rest of eternity in torment? Or would you go through some suffering here on earth, knowing that you will have the rest of eternity in the kingdom of heaven? Here's number two for walking in faith. We hold on to this understanding that Christians will suffer too. Don't be alarmed. Don't be surprised. Ryan was singled out. Satan came after him. We'll talk later about what we can do to respond, okay? But here's the second thing about walking in faith. God is good in all that he does. God can only do good. Romans 8:28 says that God works everything for the good of those who love him. Again, you look back at today's passage, right? It was never God's idea to suffer Job. It was never God's idea to take out the head. In fact, when Satan wanted absolute control and the ability to completely hurt Job, right, out of his hatred for Job, God actually put some restraint. He doesn't give Satan full power. He says, you may do this, but you cannot do this. When you are suffering and everything is dark and you can't see, you can't understand, you don't know why this is happening, why God's allowing it, hold on to those two faith statements. Okay? God is good, and he will only do good to you. And number two, in his love, right? Even those that God loves, even those who are faithful to God, will have to face suffering. Last but not least, we must cling to Jesus Christ. This is the most important thing. You do points 1 and 2, and you don't do number 3, it means nothing. Okay? This is the most important thing. We must cling to Jesus Christ. Look with me again in today's passage, Job chapter 1. Satan went to Job, or to God, right? Let's read it. Right? And said, he basically had an agenda. He said, I see that I lost one. I see that I can't touch Job. But he doesn't really love you. Take away the things that you've given him, and he's going to walk away. Right? And as we've seen before, God is not suggesting Job to Satan. God already knew the agenda of Satan. He said, have you considered my servant Job? Right? There's none like him on the earth, blameless and upright, who fears God and turns away from evil. This is how we know that God is for us, that he loves us, and that he's always after us. Look at that phrase, my servant. Have you considered my servant Job? There was a personal relationship between God and Job. God had an intimate relationship with Job. Does that make sense? But in this case, God's not presenting Job to Satan. But thousands of years later, we're told that God actually does present one of his other servants to Satan. Turn with me to Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53. It's not going to be up here, so you have to look it up yourself. The title of this passage is called A Suffering Servant. Job was a servant who suffered. But there's a greater Job. There's a greater suffering servant. And Isaiah 53 is talking about Jesus Christ. Listen to this. Verse 2. For he grew up before him like a plant, like a young plant, like a root out of dry ground. He had no form or majesty that we should look at him, and no beauty that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And as one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. He was pierced for our transgression. He was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was a chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that before it shears is silent, so opened not his mouth. It goes on and on. You know, I had a conversation with Chan, who was also involved in the accident. And he said that we can share this, but you know, the first day or two, he had a really hard time praying. I was like, hey, listen to the sermon. He's like, I can't listen right now. And he struggled with his faith, right? And so we had a time where we were able to have a conversation in person. And then at one point in our conversation, I asked him this question. I said, hey, Chan, if you can rewind time, if you can rewind the clock, go back to that exact same situation right before the turn, and you and Ryan switch places, would you do it? If you could be in Ryan's situation right now, would you do it? And he hesitated. He thought hard about it. And he said, I would. And I believe it. Right? But then everything that's about to happen to Ryan or to you or to anyone else. And if you had the option of not letting that accident happen, would you do it? Didn't need to think twice about it. Said, yeah, I wouldn't go into that situation. Why would I? Do you not realize that Jesus had the option of not suffering? He had the option of never suffering. But he looked at what was about to happen, and he still took that suffering. Why? And this is so important, guys. Romans 5, verse 8, it says, God demonstrates his love for us, and that while we are still sinners, what? Christ died for us. Let me talk about this for just a moment, okay? Chan was sharing with me that he's known Ryan for many years, but he got very close to Ryan this summer. And he feels more pain now than some of you. I want you to write this equation down. Duration of relationship multiplied by quality of that relationship equals the pain when you lose that person. Duration of the relationship multiplied by the quality of that relationship equals the pain when you lose that person. You see, Chan feels more pain than many of you. Why? Because Chan's known Ryan for a closer quality relationship than you. And so when this tragedy happened to Ryan, he has a particular level of pain that is greater than what some of you guys are going through. But here's the thing, I would imagine that if the same thing happened to his mother, as opposed to Ryan, then that pain will be even greater. Why? Because Chan has known his mother all his life, and the quality of that relationship is, I would assume that she loves him more than anyone else. When you take those two and you multiply it, and then if the same thing happened to Chan's mother, he would be way more utterly crushed. Do you understand where Ryan's mom, dad, Michelle, and Jonathan are right now? They feel a level of pain that we can't even understand. Duration of that relationship multiplied by the quality of that relationship equals the pain. Let me ask you this. How long has Jesus been God the Father for? Infinity. How perfect was the quality of that relationship? Infinity. What is infinity times infinity? And that is the suffering of Jesus Christ. You know, the night before the crucifixion, Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he was crying, and he was tormented. And you know, the Bible specifically says, you can look this up, okay? It says that he was sweating blood. I don't know about you, but I've never sweated blood before. But there's a medical phenomenon for when this rarely happens, but when you're under such immense distress, the veins inside of you begin to burst. And you begin to have an internal bleeding because you're overwhelmed and you're utterly crushed by the weight of this anxiety or this pain, right? And you begin to sweat, and blood seeps out of your pores like sweat. When Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, right before he was about to be crucified, he was looking at this cup, the suffering that was about to come to him. And he said, God, please take this away from me. But not my will, yours be done. But he was sweating blood. Why was he so afraid? Was he afraid of nails piercing his hands? For him getting whipped? For him dying? No. When he was on the cross, he didn't say, ow, my hands, my foot, my feet. That's not what he cried. You know what he cried? My God, why have you forsaken me? You know the doors, door number 1, door number 2? I asked you, if you had the option, which door do you want to be without any pain or suffering? And a lot of people say number 2, but here's the reality. You can never walk through door number 2. Because of your sins, because of what you have done, you don't deserve heaven. You cannot get into heaven on your own. So not only in this life do you have an enemy who's like a lion and he's about to devour you and you're running around, you're trying to make the best of your situation here on earth, but then when you go through door number 1 and you've gone through a lot of beating and suffering because of your enemy Satan, when you get to door number 2 and open it, the only thing you see is a lake of fire. And that's precisely why Jesus came here on earth. He walked through your door number 2 so that his door number 2, which is heaven, will be ready for you when you open it. Hebrews chapter 4. Can you open there? I know we're going a little late, but please bear with me through this. Hebrews chapter 4, verses 14 through 16. Since then, we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God. Let us hold fast. That language is let us cling to Jesus. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. You know, Chan also said this. He said this past Wednesday when he went to that prayer meeting and he looked around and he saw all these moms or adults praying, he judged them. He said, these guys don't know what Ryan's going through. These guys have never met Ryan. These guys don't know what pain I or he or the others feel. And there's truth behind that. I got bothered too. I get bothered when someone who does not understand the situation, know the gravity and the pain, make light of the situation, like pretending like he or she understands what I'm going through or what we're going through. You're not going to let someone into your heart until you know that they know what you're going through. They have to earn that space in your heart. You know what this says? It says that Jesus Christ understands every pain and suffering because what he experienced is infinitely greater than what you could ever experience. So he, right now in this moment, knows how you feel. He is not a God who can't unsympathize, but he's one who is sitting. He says, I know your pain. I have been there too. And then it says this. Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace. Talking about going to Jesus Christ when we are suffering. Why? That we may receive mercy, and then check this out, find grace to help in time of need. You know how I said that the greatest tragedy is to walk away from God when Satan has brought suffering in your life. When Satan is attacking you, you have one of two options. Do you run away from God or do you run closer and more desperately to God? Those who do not know who God truly is will walk away from Him. But when you begin to understand what the Bible says, and when you begin to understand who Jesus Christ is and who God is, when suffering comes your way, when you are visited by the enemy, you run closer to God. Why? Because we are able to find help in times of our need. Psalm 126:5-6 says this: those who sow in tears shall reap with shouts of joy. He who goes out weeping, bearing the seed of sowing, shall come home with shouts of joy. Think about this, guys. Let's say you have seeds for roses, okay? You want to plant, or let's say, yeah, roses, okay? When you plant rose seeds, do you expect sunflowers to come out? No, that's stupid. Why? You reap what you sow. If you sow a rose seed, then you expect to reap a rose flower. Does that make sense? But here, we're told, we sow in tears, will reap shouts of joy. Tears and joy, they're two opposite things. How is this possible? This is only possible through Jesus Christ. When we get to Revelation chapter 21, and I want you to go home and read this. Okay? Listen to the words of Revelation 21, starting in verse 1. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people. For God himself will be with them as their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. And death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore. For the former things have passed away. All of us are going through door number 1 right now. All of us go through this life. There are times of joy, but there are times of sadness. There are times when we are mourning. But we are told in this psalm, that though we may mourn right now, and we're planting seeds of mourning, there will one day come when we are able to shout with joy. I want you to hear me in this. Even if Ryan never walks again here on earth, he will run for the rest of eternity. Even if Ryan is suffering right now, he will never experience suffering for the rest of eternity. Even if he is in pain, and immense pain right this moment, he will never experience pain ever again. And that was because of what Jesus Christ has done for us. Satan will attack you to try to sever your relationship with God. Satan will attack you so that your heart turns away from God. Are you going to, after being attacked by Satan, are you then going to accomplish the will of Satan by walking away from God? I know some of you guys said you had a hard time praying. After this message, you should say, I have a hard time not praying. I'm going to be running to Jesus now. He is not the one to blame. He is the one that we need. He is the one that we need. We're going to go into time of prayer, but can I just share some stories with you guys? I want to update you guys on what's been happening. Is that okay? I'll be visiting Ryan again today. Check up on him. You know, Satan meant evil in this situation. Satan attacked Ryan to accomplish a goal. You know what that was? That was to kill his faith, and that was to kill your faith. Guys, in case you think this was an act or all coincidence, in case you think there was a completely neutral party from the cosmic world and it was all purely just an accident, think about this, okay? When you look at our JG Facebook page or group page, right? Go past my updates about Ryan. Go down just a little bit in our history. You know what you see right before all the updates about Ryan? There are 2 posts by none other